topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we've not met before and you don't know me, I'm a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, logotherapist, speaker, and author. I am constantly researching and helping my clients elevate their game and their culture. My team and I at Gusto now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building dynamic, high-performance cultures, inspirational leadership, and nurturing managers activated by meaning and purpose. And did you know that inspired employees in purpose-led companies outperform their satisfied peers by a factor of 2.25 to 1? In other words, inspiration and purpose are good for the bottom line. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com and my personal site, elisecortez.com. If you're getting into today's program, we are joined today by Dr. Paul White, who is a psychologist, author, and speaker who makes work relationships work. As a speaker and trainer, Dr. White has taught around the world, including North America, Europe, South America, Asia, and the Caribbean. He's the co-author of the best-selling book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, Empowering Organizations by Encouraging People, with co-author Dr. Gary Chapman. We'll be talking today about the ROI of appreciation in the workplace, how it differs from recognition, and examples of the 5 languages of appreciation. He joins us today from Wichita, Kansas. A hearty welcome, Dr. White, to Working on Purpose.
Thanks. Glad to be with you.
Isn't it great? I'm so happy to have you, and I want to celebrate this beautiful thing you put into the world. Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely enjoy it, appreciate it, align with it, which is why I reached out to you on LinkedIn and said, please come on Working on Purpose and talk about this with me.
Yeah, glad to do that. And we're pleased that the book has done well over time. It recently went over 800,000 copies. So we're on our way to 1 million, but that's all right, whatever.
So listeners and viewers, for a little context, the average book doesn't sell more than 3,000 copies. Just a little context for you. So this really is something to celebrate. Okay, so let's just start, Dr. Paul, with a bit of your background and what drew you to research in the appreciation space, and how I'll get to kind of the work that you do and how you met Dr. Chapman as well. But let's start with, why appreciation? Why the workplace?
Yeah, so actually the first part of my career, I tested students with learning difficulties, ADHD and dyslexia and all those kinds of things. Mid-career, I had some friends who were business consultants that knew that I'd grown up in the context of a family-owned business, and asked me to help them because they kept running into family issues as they were dealing with businesses, because 85% of all the companies in the U.S. are family owned. And so I did that, traveled around, got to work with significantly wealthy families and businesses, dealing with the family issues that cross over and business succession. And I was in North Carolina talking to, in this case, the father and business owner, asked him how the plan was going. And he said, it's fine. My son's stepping up. I think it's going to work. And I walked across the hall and I asked the son the same question. He said, this is a disaster. It's never going to work. I can't ever please my dad, which I could understand and identify with. So my wife and I were reading The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Chapman at that time, bestseller in personal relationships, sold 25 million copies. And I thought, I wonder if this could help, in family businesses and businesses. So I pursued Dr. Chapman for a year. It took me a year to get through to him and pitched the idea. And he had others pitch, but I had sort of a background both in business and in relationships. And I had the good fortune of having attended the same undergraduate school that he did. And so I think that was a little bit of a foot in the door. And so off we went and wrote the book together and developed an online assessment, which has been taken by almost 500,000 people, and then training materials to allow people to learn how to apply the concepts in their daily lives.
I really appreciate it. Of course, as somebody who develops cultures of gusto and inspirational leadership, appreciation is foundational. So I'm totally aligned with you, Dr. Paul, and want to help. Now let's help our listeners and viewers understand the difference. Well, first, let's talk about this. I want to talk about the return on investment for appreciation. What does it actually yield in the workplace for those listeners and viewers who don't know yet?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of business leaders and organizational leaders think, it's about making people happy and feel good. And we want that to happen, and it usually does. But really, the impact is in how the organization functions, that we know, like right now, for a lot of organizations, turnover is high, and we can reduce that. We reduce conflict within the workplace. We increase productivity. When team members feel valued and appreciated, productivity and profitability increases. Profitability largely because the single largest non-productive cost is turnover. If you can reduce that, we can make things go better. And it's fun because it's really one of these issues that our assessment is, a lot of managers and leaders have taken various different kind of personality assessments or whatever, but most frontline people don't get that opportunity. And so we priced ours low enough that, PepsiCo across their organization, Miller Coors, Caterpillar are using it with their frontline workers, and they really enjoy it. Sort of, self-discovery, and also they share it with their team members. And so good things happen when people feel valued and appreciated. And sort of out of self-interest, managers enjoy their work more because they're not having to deal with all these stupid little conflicts over size of, the computer, or whether the person has a window, or all the things that really aren't relevant to the mission of the team.
Mm-hmm. A couple of things in response to that. One, in the years that I've spent in measuring employee engagement and diagnosing culture, et cetera, we know, and you say this in your book, that the number one driver for employee engagement and satisfaction is that feeling valued and appreciated.
Right.
So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say about, you mentioned how much this idea of inculcating appreciation in the organization helps with retention. You have some fantastic stats in your book that ought to give leaders some tremendous pause, that the cost to replace what a frontline person is 150% of their salary, and a high-level executive something like 400% of their salary.
Right.
So in other words, let's learn how to put appreciation into our businesses, shall we, folks? This is worth your time and effort.
Yeah, and research continues to come out that shows that, in fact, right now the EU, the European Union, and the Securities and Exchange Commission, the U.S., are implementing procedures and laws and regulations about companies having to report their efforts on employee satisfaction, retention, appreciation, because two companies that do the same kind of thing, if one pays attention to that factor, they're going to outperform their competitors significantly. And so that makes a difference to an investor, right? that you're going to go with a company that earns you more as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I appreciate that distinction. I didn't know that about that legislation. Okay, so now let's do this. I think lots of organizations are now hearing very distinctive terms. We hear things about mattering and belonging. Those are distinctive terms. Recognition and appreciation are distinctive terms. Can you distinguish them for us?
Sure. Yeah. Employee recognition has been around for, a couple of decades, and it has improved the workplace to some degree. However, it's stalled out over the last decade or so because employee recognition is largely institutional. It's organizational. It comes down from the top, the executive team, maybe through HR, and it's largely about performance. I mean, they're recognizing and rewarding people who are meeting goals and creating profits and so forth, which is good when it's implemented well and consistently, which is a big if, because that doesn't often happen. But right now, I mean, employee engagement has continued to go down over the past several years,
Mhm.
and people leaving, turnover goes up, and so they really stalled. And it's a tough field. I'll just, I'm a Midwestern. I'll just be straight that there are some significant companies that are locked into employee recognition, because that's how they earn their money, through the rewards and all that. Billions and billions of dollars are spent,
Mhm.
but they really don't have the impact that the organization's happening. Employee appreciation, and we focus on authentic appreciation, really is about the person.
Yeah.
Uh, that we believe that employees and team members are more than just a production unit, that we have characteristics that are of value. In addition, I personally like to work with cheerful people more than grumpy people,
Mhm.
and other kinds of things that are of value outside of your performance. And also, it's person to person. It's not down the org chart. Well, one of the cool things that we found and can facilitate is people being able to communicate appreciation across the organization to team members, to a different department, top down, from a frontline worker to their supervisor. So it's really person to person, and that's the focus of it.
Thank you. I think that was a beautiful explanation and way to distinguish those two things. We'll get more into this because I think you say in your book that 93% of organizations have an employee recognition program.
Right.
So very often, of course, as you say, that's when you're oftentimes recognizing them for how long they've been with the company, or they get the plaque and all that kind of stuff. So, and this is really about more of the day-to-day interaction of being able to really value who the human is. And so I want to just really call that out and celebrate that too. That very much aligns with our approach to creating cultures of gusto and destination workplaces.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and so, to be honest, some supervisors, owners, managers get it, and others don't,
Sure.
and that's fine. We try to help those who are interested grow in it, and actually, when we're in a workplace, we'll ask people that aren't that interested to sort of step to the side and not be obstructive,
Mm-hmm.
and just watch. And lots of times, we win them over when they see that we're focused on authenticity, and realistic feedback, versus just going through the motions and saying or doing something because you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. You have I think it's a whole, if I recall, a whole chapter in your book on why leaders resist appreciation, which is really interesting. And I've certainly encountered this too in my own work, developing leaders and cultures. And, you say it in your book, oftentimes when a leader resists, what's behind that is, why should I be concerned about communicating appreciation to employees when I pay them? That's what they're here for.
You're right.
And I hear it all the time with the people that I'm working with in organizations too, Paul, where that's just this, well, what are you talking about? This is how I came up, and this is what it is that you do. But yet you beautifully situate this too. You talked about the retention opportunity and benefit, the return on an investment there. But then you also have this tremendous motivation, wherein you actually say in your book that four out of five employees say that they are motivated to work harder when their boss shows appreciation for their work. Wow. So now we have discretionary effort, we have commitment, we have loyalty. So a few reasons that we might want to consider this idea of, why should I give somebody appreciation when I already give them a paycheck?
Yeah. And also, I think a big barrier for a lot of leaders, whatever level they are, is that they're busy, and they're saying,
Sure.
how am I going to fit this in? I'm supposed to do this as well. And what we found is that, yes, we want leaders at whatever level involved, but really, sort of the secret sauce has been teaching team members how to show appreciation to one another. And, as younger generations have come into the workforce, they're more focused on peer and collegial relationships than, top down. And so those kinds of actions from their colleagues are more meaningful to them.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I find really strong about your whole approach, Paul, is, that you realize that there is strength in creating a culture of appreciation, which means it's not all on the manager's shoulders, and that other people, other team members can support and appreciate each other. And we want that. We encourage that. Everybody wins. And that way it isn't just on the manager to do that, which reduces some of that load that they already feel as a result. So I think that's really strong about your approach to, and then of course, making the assessment price accessible to pretty much anybody also helps too.
Yeah, when I worked with wealthy families and businesses, I learned that you can either go high end and really customized service and just reach a few, or you can sort of try to keep the cost low and go to the greater population. And I grew up professionally in the not-for-profit world, serving where a lot of people give a lot, but they don't have much money for rewards and training. And I just wanted to try to reach those, so we've kept the cost low so that it can be utilized by anybody. I mean, if you do it everybody at once, which most companies don't do, I mean, you just sort of piecemeal it over time, department by department, and it can be done easily, especially if you quit giving away millions and billions of dollars of gifts that aren't returning much to you as a company.
Yes, and I want to talk more about that after the break. But let's grab our first break. I am your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We're on the air with Dr. Paul White, who is a psychologist, author, and speaker who makes work relationships work. As a speaker and trainer, Dr. White has taught around the world. We've been talking about the basis of appreciation, why it's important to develop in an organization, how you can start to distinguish it from recognition. After the break, we're going to talk about why the benefits of recognition really aren't there, as we've been sort of hinting at, what's under that. And then we'll start talking about the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive, they're led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness, and we do business in a way that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. So one of my latest came out. It's called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand today's workforce better. What do they want and need from you to give you their best and want to stick around? And then I provide you 22 best practices to equip you to provide that through your leadership and your culture. You can find my books on Amazon or my personal website, elisecortez.com. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Dr. Paul White. He's the co-author of The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, Empowering Organizations by Encouraging People. So as we started to hint at in the first segment, Dr. Paul, we were talking about how traditional recognition programs really aren't working today. And I think it's important that we help our listeners and viewers understand why and really what's under that. So, of course, there's the plaque phenomenon or certificate phenomenon that we have where you're usually recognizing length of service or something like that, which I think you say is like 50%, a trophy or something like that. And then another 35%, which comes in some form of non-monetary reward, letter or public recognition being trotted across the stage or whatever. Say a bit more about why these programs aren't really working to motivate and retain people.
Well, it partly has to do with the nature of us as people. I mean, I have a hard time figuring out getting a plaque for past service, how that motivates me towards future behavior. It's just not what we know about how humans work too much. I mean, we appreciate it, but it doesn't mean we're going to do much more. Also, one of the biggest issues is that repeatedly the top 10 or 15% of any organization, whether it's a department or a division or a company, are the ones that get recognized repeatedly.
Right.
And so you have your big group of 50 to 60% below them that are good people. They're working hard. maybe they're newer and they're still learning their positions, but they're not hearing anything. And so we know clearly that once they showed 79% of the people that left a job cited a lack of appreciation as the main reason. And when you don't hear things, you leave. And so we're really, I mean, you can implement and improve performance of your high performers, but it's sort of like a sports team, a football team. You can have stars, but you have to have blockers and tacklers too. You have to have regular everyday people, unless you're a really small organization and have a lot of stars. And so focusing on what motivates people and rewards them. And what we found is that not everybody feels valued and appreciated in the same way. And that's where we came to the 5 languages. And money doesn't get it for a lot of people. It does for some people that are motivated that way, but the majority of the organization, especially if it's a bonus or a raise, we know that there's a short-term effect, maybe 2 months that it might impact them, but after that, it sort of fades into the background and life is regular again, and they're just back to normal.
Excellent. So what I'd love to do next is just take a tour of the 5 languages here and kind of bring them to life and give some examples so our listeners and viewers understand what that looks like in action. And maybe as they go along, they might start to identify which one seems more like them or their preference. And then after we do that, then I think we have room to talk more about just why. I think we can bring home why the recognition programs don't work when we start to distinguish some of the numbers of the preferred languages as we go, especially tangible gifts. So let's start with words of affirmation. Can you bring that one to life for us? And I know this is the one where this is the preferred way that most people identify as their preferred language of appreciation in the workplace.
That's true, but unfortunately, I think our culture and leaders overemphasize it because over 50% of people choose a language other than words. And so if you only use words, you're missing over 50% of your team members. Right now, we've got new data that we've calculated that 44% of the workforce chooses words as their primary language. And one of the things is that we've learned is that statements like, good job, glad you're part of the team, way to go, it just bounces off their forehead. I mean, it just has no impact at all. And really, you have to be specific. And we teach a model of, use a person's name. We like to hear our name. If you're writing it, please spell it correctly. And then be specific about what you value about them. And it can be about their work and what they've done, that, they got their reports done on time. But the third piece that's really important is to tell them and communicate why it's important, either to you, to the organization, or to the client. For getting your, Sylvia, thanks for getting your reports in on time to me. That way I have a little bit of leeway to be able to pull all the reports together and get it out to my boss on time as well. So it's really important to do that. And there's different kinds of actions in each language. Words, it can be one-on-one. That's sort of the most common way, but it could be in a small group or a team Zoom meeting that you call out somebody that really served one of their clients well. One of the things we know that about 40% of the workforce doesn't like to go up in front of the group, a large group, to be recognized, and it's actually a negative for them. So you've sort of gone cross purposes for that. And then also written communication is helpful for introverts, that especially giving it, that they get really anxious about sort of talking to somebody directly, and being able to send a text or an email or write a card is more comfortable for them.
Beautifully articulated, Dr. Paul. One thing I'd like to do is map over what you said about when you give the words of affirmation and you share why or how the contribution was important and how it made a difference to the other person's work. Now you're in the space of what we call mattering. And mattering has become a tremendous area to distinguish and help organizations to really help people feel like they are valued and appreciated. So I just wanted to put that together for listeners and viewers who've been listening to this show for a while. They probably made that connection already, but new people maybe haven't yet. So just wanted to thread that little needle there together. It's just gorgeous.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the second language, quality time. And let me just say here, that's interesting. I took your assessment and I did discover in the workplace, quality time is my preferred language of appreciation. And that is both with my team and also with the really sacred work I get to do with organization leaders. And so that was helpful for me to, I had thought it was just words of affirmation. So I really appreciate that. Now it makes much more sense as to where I get my juice and my jam. So thank you, Dr. Paul.
You bet. You bet. Yeah, quality time is an interesting one in that we've learned that it really differs according to generation as far as the age and stage of the worker. That for those of us that are older, like me, quality time, we learned that it was really about valuing time with our manager or supervisor, because time is really one of our most precious commodities, either in them giving us instruction or just some focus and listening to us or hearing our ideas. But for younger workers, I tell leaders, just because you have a team member that has quality time as their language doesn't mean they want time with you. Okay. You may be wonderful, you may be great, but they really want to hang out with their peers and go to lunch, go out after work. And so, and this is one of the barriers that a lot of people would say, oh, I don't have time to spend time with everybody. Well, you don't have to, because they don't want to spend time with you necessarily. And that's where in our inventory, we not only identify the language, but the specific actions and from whom you want them. So you get really sort of granular. And so it's 26% of the population. So about 1 out of every 4 people value quality time. And, you can, usually you compare it with words or whatever, and that sort of multiplies the effect. But it's an important piece to know that just, walking by and giving a word of praise isn't going to cut it for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think really helped, which also I could really relate to and be affirmed by, is part of using the quality time preferred language shows up in like quality conversations, quality discussions. So this is a quality exchange. You're taking time to share your thoughts. You're being vulnerable, sharing your thoughts. That for me is, if I always had a saying when as I've gone through life, which was terrible in the whole dating world, but it was, if you're not going to share your soul with me, don't waste my time. Like, okay, see, I gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a nice weed out factor, Paul.
There you go.
Anyway, okay, so number 3 appreciation language is acts of service. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, acts of service. It's not rescuing low performing colleagues. These people live by sort of the mantra that don't tell me you support me, show me. Words are cheap. And so it's 20%, so 1 out of every 5 colleagues. And it's really interesting that it doesn't take a lot. It's sort of, it's important to understand what kind of help they want. And also, if we ask people, say, hey, would you like some help? Our culture, the normal response is, no, I'm good, and so you have to sort of push through that. But 2 most common contexts are when you're working on a time deadline, you have got to get something done. And what's something somebody can do to help you out, whether that's maybe take part of your daily work so that you can focus on the project, or maybe delegate a piece to them. And the other common context is when in a service industry, maybe in a dentist's office, a whole bunch of people show up all at once to the receptionist desk, and she can't, greet all of them or sign them in. Maybe the office manager, whose job it isn't to do this, helps out to get past that sort of stalemate and clog up. So, and it really is important. It doesn't take a lot for them. You don't have to do it repeatedly, like every time, but pay attention, and they really light up, and they respond by loyalty. I mean, they are ready to sort of go to war with you if you help them out when they need it.
Mm-hmm. A couple additional things I wanted to pepper in there that I thought were very, very powerful in your book that help us understand how to meet a person who has this preferred language is, one, when you offer to help them, that now wouldn't be the time. When you ask them, what would be helpful specifically, how would you like the tasks done? And they tell you how they want the task done. That is not your time to tell them,
Yeah.
there's a better way to do it. And let me show you what it is, right? That is not the time to be doing any coaching, right? If you're going to do an act of service for somebody, you do the task in the way that they want you to. And the other important thing is, when would be best to help, and that you make sure that you finish the task. You don't leave it hanging out there. If you're going to do an act of service, you got to fully come through for the other person.
Yes, absolutely. And doing it their way is really important. I was working with a group of inner city schools, and the administrative assistants said, will you tell the principal to quit moving our piles? We do things by piles, and he wanted to come in, and it was just messing things up, and it wasn't helpful at all.
Yeah, perfect example. Well, let's grab our last break because I want to cover the last two languages here, but I want to nuance them specifically. So let's go ahead and cut for our break now. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We were on the air with Dr. Paul White, who is the co-author of the 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. We've been talking about a few of the languages here. After the break, we're going to talk about the last 2. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As you know by now, this program is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you along your journey to realize more of your potential. If you want to learn more about how we can work together and learn about the Gusto Now Academy for leaders and individuals on various journeys alike, make your way to gusto-now.com and then navigate to the training tab to find the Academy. We'd love to have you join us. If you are just joining us today, my guest is Dr. Paul White. He is the co-author of the 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, Empowering Organizations by Encouraging People. So the next language of appreciation is tangible gifts. And I've really found this really, really interesting. And you have a whole chapter on blind spots about, whatever language is your least favorite, you probably are blindest to its power to somebody else. This is my least favorite.
Okay.
So let's talk about tangible gifts.
Yeah, tangible gifts in our model is not raises, it's not bonuses. That's, according to the organization and management. It's really just small things and items that show that you're getting to know your colleagues as people and what they like. The most commonly given gift in the workplace is food. Whether that's somebody that likes to bake things and brings in some coffee cake, or, maybe the supervisor stops and gets some bagels or donuts. Actually, I'm hearing feedback that a lot of places are really tired of pizza for lunch and want to sort of move past that. But also gift cards are the second most frequently given gift. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. In fact, we did some research and found out that there's 2 groups of people around gift cards. One like the sort of generic card, the Amazon or Visa gift cards, so they can, shop for whatever they want. But there's a group that doesn't like those because they don't want to spend it on bills. They want it according to sort of their specialty website, whether it's a bookstore or a fishing store, that they can buy something that's fun. And gifts, while it's being used in employee recognition a lot, it doesn't have a lot of impact. Latest research shows it's 9% of employees choose that as their primary way of wanting to be show appreciation. It's lower in other cultures. And because, if you never hear anything positive, if you never get any help when you need it, or nobody stops by to see you, and you get a gift and that your manager didn't even have to pay for it, it's from the company, it doesn't feel very, authentic and meaningful. So, but this is where it is the thought that counts. It's not the amount of money. That maybe they know that you're a Dallas Maverick fan, and so they get you something related to that, or they know that you're going to plant a garden this spring, and you've never done that before, and can get you a catalog or a magazine about that. But it can even be online. I mean, let's say if you're going to coach your kid's soccer team for the first time, and this person has some experience, they send you a website about training activities. So it's just about you as a person. And it can be related to performance, but lots of times it's not. It's just sort of celebrating you and what you like.
Mm-hmm. And the key there, as you say so beautifully in the book, is just the importance of, appreciating and knowing your people as individuals and taking the time to learn about what's important to them. That's part of what makes the tangible gift meaningful to someone who has this preference language.
Yeah, and giving everybody the same thing gets you nowhere.
Right. Yeah, I know many people that in my standard gift, this is what I give.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it, because when I give gifts, I do really try to think about, well, who are they? What do they care about? What matters to them? Not what do I think they need or what's easiest for me to give.
Right.
So appreciate that. Okay, so then now the last appreciation language is physical touch, which you say so candidly in your book that you had left out for some period of time in your assessment, and then I think you've got some pushback and such. And it's powerful. I can tell you, for me, Dr. Paul, I use touch a lot. I lived in Brazil for 2 years. Part of the reason my company is called Gusto now is because it honors the vibrancy, the passion, the expression of those Latino cultures. I lived in Spain as well.
Yeah.
Touch is a really important part of living in those cultures.
Absolutely.
And when I'm doing workshops, I'm careful. I notice, who can I touch on the shoulder or whatever. But let's talk about physical touch in the workplace.
Yeah, it's really an issue in the U.S. and some parts of Western Europe, whereas in other parts of the world, it's not an issue. And as we work in multicultural organizations and even within the U.S. among the largely Hispanic community, touch is important. And if you don't touch, it feels very cold and objective.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's what we found is spontaneous celebration in the workplace. I mean, it's a high five when you reach a goal, or a fist bump when you solve a problem, maybe a congratulatory handshake, or when somebody's just found out that their husband's in a car accident, he's in the hospital. I mean, hand on the shoulder or a side hug, is appropriate depending on the relationship. It's always the recipient who decides what's appropriate, but I think it's becoming less, toxic than maybe it was. The Northeast still, I mean, in New York, you don't hug, they check in you for weapons, I mean, it's not part of the culture, but I think it can be very meaningful in appropriate and healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm. Now, I can tell you for the, Languages of Love, the original Dr. Gary Chapman book that this book is also based on. For me, words of affirmation is also important for those kinds of relationships. But just quickly, just to distinguish, and the cultural thing is so beautiful. When I lived in Spain, what the Spaniards taught me and gave to me was, I learned the power of relationships when I lived in Spain. Everybody's kissing. Mm-hmm. Talk about physical touch. Everybody's kissing. It's beautiful. And as an American, you're like, what is that? Public PDAs. And then living in Brazil, the language of touch, you really can't really have a conversation with somebody without touching them. It's just not effective. Right. And women, and when we sit and talk together as women, we are oftentimes stroking each other's face or touching each other's hair. It's that kind of level of touch. I had to unlearn all that, Dr. Paul, when I came back to the States, because people misinterpreted that, or they were offended by it. And anyway, just to distinguish, this idea of touch and the nuance and levels of how people interpret touch, just to know.
Yeah, and you also, I mean, the Asian cultures primarily, I mean, in Japan for sure, I mean, a handshake is about the only physical touch that happens in the business context there. Mm-hmm. So you have to be culturally aware. But I think we're loosening up a little bit appropriately in the workplace here.
Yeah, well, we're out to create cultures of gusto, so we don't need to necessarily have public displays of affection all the time and have our hands on everybody, but we definitely want to see vibrancy and passion and expression and certainly appreciation. So you and I are locked arm in arm, Dr. Paul. You can't get away now.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit here in our last few minutes here. I'd love to help have our listeners and viewers better understand how you've helped organizations implement a culture of appreciation. How do you do your work?
Yeah, what's been interesting over time, because I mean, we've been doing this 15 plus years, and started with some very small organizations, typically, and or like a department. And uh, often, what we do is somebody finds our material and finds it interesting, and then we sort of help them do a pilot study
Okay.
versus trying to get the whole organization to do that. We will go across the whole organization, but it's rarely top down across the way. It's more, piece by piece, where we find somebody who's interested and we have them take our online assessment. Over time, we've developed about 15 industry specific versions, because the languages seem to be relevant and almost in the same proportions across industries, but the actions are different. So like an active service to a nurse is different than an active service to a public school teacher, to a carpenter. And so we specify and help people get specific what they want done, or what kind of time they want, and so forth. And then because I grew up in the not-for-profit work, I wanted to create a low-cost training materials, and so we have the appreciation at work training kit. Costs not quite $1,000, but you can use it multiple times with different groups, and it's videos, instructional videos, it's handouts, it's slides, it's a facilitator's guide that just walks you through the activities and all that. It takes about a half day. And we've taken hundreds and thousands of teams through that. And we have people can sort of get trained and do it internally, or we have, a bank of facilitators, I don't know, 1,500 or so across the world that they can use if they want to do that. And so it's really getting small groups together to talk about it and learn about how each other view appreciation and how they don't want it, and start to apply it.
Mm. No, I so appreciate that. And you said this at the beginning of our conversation about when you make the assessment available to anybody, and there's something powerful about learning about yourself, right? So just giving people the opportunity to learn, oh, this is important to me. Oh, that's why I respond to this. So powerful, right? And then being able to equip the manager and the colleagues with that knowledge is just so powerful. And even in just some of the work that I do, helping organizations identify the individual values of the organization, and of the organization as well as its purpose. There's been so many times when I've done these programs, and I remember just one instance where a woman, I'd done some work for a law firm here in Dallas, and one of the women she was an administrative assistant who'd been called back from retirement to come back into the office to work. Her number one value was kindness. And I said, does your boss know that that's your number one value? She put her head down and tears streamed down her face.
Oh, yeah.
No, most certainly he doesn't know.
Right.
But I said, what would happen, do you suppose, if he did know? Anyway, so I just really want to celebrate what you're doing. It's just such a powerful, and really in many ways, foundational way to really start to elevate the relationships in the workplace where we spend most of our day.
Yeah, and we have new research coming out all the time. We do research, but now more and more people, and research study came out in the end of 2025 from Malaysia that found that combining employee recognition with authentic appreciation had a greater effect than either by itself, right? Because you could sort of motivate people who are motivated this way, but support and encourage people through appreciation and encouragement through the 5 languages, and the impact is greater. And so, PepsiCo, Caterpillar, Mercedes-Benz, others are combining what we're doing with their employee recognition. Ours doesn't cost as much as much because we're not giving away a bunch of stuff, but it's impactful. And also because with AI, with a lot of different kinds of things, people are feeling pretty disconnected at a personal level.
Right.
And this provides sort of a channel for people to connect at a meaningful way.
Well, the other thing too that you're doing, which I do through my work too, is you've equipped those individuals and now they know something about appreciation and then they go home with that knowledge. And
Right.
now they can start to bring that home into those personal relationships and now things get better at home. So I love that whole ripple effect, which is a big reason I keep doing the work that I do, which brings me to my next question. I wouldn't be doing this work that I do, Dr. Paul, where we're really helping to transform individual leaders and organizations if I didn't believe and didn't revere the wonderful power of growth, the possibility of growth, of reaching for our higher potential. And so for me, it's such sacred work to work with leaders where you're in that sacred, personal, intimate space with them, helping them grow and learn and face their demons, their mindset limitations, etc. So I'd love to have you share an example of a leader that you have worked with along the way who was initially resistant to the idea of appreciation, but saw some great results when they did implement it.
We had an article written about our work in the New York Times with a mining company in South Dakota and Colorado. And it was interesting that the top leadership was a family-owned business. The top leadership, they found our resources and they wanted to bring us in. And a mining company with miners and truck drivers and concrete, people, it's not the group that you think, oh, this is the touchy-feely group that's going to want to do this. And so there was resistance. But when they heard what we were doing and the focus on authenticity and that we encourage, if you're having a hard time appreciating somebody, don't try to fake it. That's going to really undermine trust in your relationship as a whole. And so it was interesting to see them embrace it and try it out. And that's sort of an interesting. I mean, there are people that get excited about this. Oh, I've heard about the 5 love languages. I thought about work. How do you apply it? But then there's other people like, what? But to do it within the context of relationships with people that you work with daily, authentic and genuine, and you receive appreciation in a way that's meaningful to you. What happened then is they started doing things like they created little symbols to put on their helmets of their own language.
Mm.
And then it became really sort of an honor to be able to go through the training. They have a pretty fast turnover for people that just join. So they have like a 90-day waiting period, and then when they could go through that, then they would go through the training and share that. And it's been fun to see that, as well as other places that take it on and sort of, whether they make T-shirts or they create a gift card stand where people can go get cards and sort of adopt it into their own culture. It's been fun to see.
Mm. I so appreciate that. I personally, one of the most cherished things that I know my work is working is when I get the call from the spouse saying, I don't know what you're doing, but thank you.
Yeah.
So the show goes by so fast, Dr. Paul. It's listened to by people around the world. What would you like to leave the listeners and viewers with, say, in about 20 seconds?
I would say, first of all, start somewhere with someone, that it doesn't take a lot. If it's words, that's okay. Do it privately versus in public. Be specific, but then learn more about it. And, our website and appreciationatwork.com. And I'll invite people, they can write me at paul@drpaulwhite, drpaulwhite.com. Tell them, you heard it on this podcast, and I'll send you a sample report and sample group profile too, so you can see what it looks like, and then try it out with just even a small group at your workplace.
So glad to cross paths with you, Dr. Paul. It's a delight to know you, to learn more about the language of appreciation, the preferred ways of appreciation. I really learned a lot from your book and this conversation. Thank you for coming on Working on Purpose.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
So welcome. Listeners and viewers, you are going to want to learn more about Dr. Paul White, the work that he does as a leadership trainer, helping companies to improve culture, and his book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. You can visit him at his personal site. It's drpaulwhite.com. So it's drpaulwhite.com. And then his business website is appreciationatwork.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on the air with Ken Lizotte. He's the founder and CEO of Emerson Consulting Group, which is a consulting firm helping establish thought leadership to professionals of all types, and also the author of Walden for Hire, Business Lessons from Henry David Thoreau. We talked about Thoreau's vast work experience and philosophy of work, his work as an entrepreneur and an inventor in his family pencil business, and the school he founded, all of which give us a fresh perspective on business today. Next week, we'll be on the air with Yadira Caro. She's an organizational psychological practitioner and coach, talking about her book, Hardcore Soft Skills, a guide to working with humans. See you then, and let's continue learning and leaning into how to discover how to elevate the operating system as a leader, becoming inspirational, and create destination workplaces where legendary business takes place. Let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.